Welcome back, guys. I'm gonna do a couple videos here over the next little while that have to do with my friend's cars, the history of the car, where they got it, and the build. First off, let me clear up some misconceptions. There is no set way of modifying a car that is a build. There's many different ways to do it. My first car that I'm going to talk about is a 99 Honda Civic owned by my friend Joe called Black Betty. About 10, 11 years ago, I was in Alabama visiting my aunt with my fiance, and I ended up getting a text message from my friend Joe. He was driving a Nissan Altima at the time, beat up car, real beat up. I get the front end picture of a car with a huge radiator zip tied to it. I didn't know what it was, which is strange because I usually know just about every car. Turns out my friend had bought, for just a couple $100, a 99 Honda Civic from some guy out in the county that had been wrecked by a deer. Now let me tell you something about my friend Joe. He probably is the least afraid person when it comes to cars I've ever met. He will do anything. He will go to any length to modify his car, and he is not afraid to do whatever he wants. Okay, so it turns out when I get back, Joe's got this Frankenstein of a car back at the apartments. He actually borrowed the radiator from his Nissan to get it home because, of course, it was hit by a deer. Joe had this idea when he got the car that he was going to up the performance a little bit, but he was going to cut weight, which in turn would cause the car to go just a little faster. And when I say cut the weight, I mean over a period of time, Joe did some real work to the car before he started to cut weight. First thing he did was he put a set of coilover suspension on it, which lowered the car quite a bit. Coilovers make the ride pretty firm, but help it to go around a corner. He rebuilt the rear suspension with his twins when they were 10 years old. He put a new intake on it, fuel injectors, an air filter. And funny enough, his overflow from his radiator was a pressurized Monster energy drink can. Joe's just a whole different kind of person, I'm telling you. The car took on a black and green look. He had some different wheels on the front and the rear that were painted this really bright neon green. He did different accents around the car in neon green. It was pretty much a riot. Plus, my friend Joe has this thing about exhaust systems, and he believes that the better exhaust is not tone, it's actually decibel level. And let me tell you, his car would make your ears bleed. But the biggest thing that Joe did over time that some people thought was kind of crazy, but again, he didn't care, it was his own build, was he started getting rid of weight. It started off with removing airbags, removing the rear seat, but then it turned into like the most extreme things you've ever seen. He removed the rear windows and the rear doors and put plastic windows in the rear doors. He did it so it looked like it came from the factory that way, so he did a really good job. He cut the lower half of the dash out of the car. All the carpet, of course, was gone. All that was left was two seats. The spare tire was gone. All the plastics inside of the car were gone. He used two pieces of belt to make the grab handles to open and close the doors. He ended up cleaning up all the carpet out of the trunk as well. Yeah, I mean, the car was pretty much a bathtub by that point. I ended up driving it to a car show for him. He wasn't feeling well in Des Moines, and it was pouring rain. And because there was nothing in the car at all, it sounded like nails in a tin can. And consequently, that was the last time I drove that car. It ran really well, and it drove really well, and it was really quick. Had a short throw shifter in it, so that was kind of fun. The 5-speed. Over time, like I said, Joe wasn't afraid to do absolutely anything to this car. He put vents on the hood. He cut the front fenders so the wheel arch was super, super high, and you could see the suspension underneath. He did that on both sides to cut weight, but it's also a thing that Honda import guys do. Probably the craziest thing I'd ever seen was, well, first off, let me say, he took the aluminum crash bars from underneath the plastic bumpers. He removed those and drilled huge holes in the rear bumper so that when air came through underneath of the car, it didn't get caught in that rear bumper cover. It went through for aerodynamic reasons. But the number one thing he did to this car that still to this day blows my mind and takes a lot of guts was, here's my car Alice, and I'll show you. Up in the center of the car, he cut a square and added a roof scoop like in a rally car, a true rally car. And he came up with the foam that fit the two holes so that it wouldn't rain inside of the car. Something I've never seen anyone have the guts to do, but Joe did have the guts to do that. You know, I've been to car shows in Ankeny with Joe in that car. I've been to car shows in Monroe and Prairie City. Probably the funnest car car show that I went to with him was an import car show in Des Moines, where they were able to basically get a parking garage, three stories of a parking garage for about 6 hours, and nothing but import cars, and Joe's car fit right in there. Some people go for performance. Some people try to build a car that's a highway cruiser, but Joe went out, totally out with this car. I drove in the car when he first got it. And then I was behind him in traffic when all of this weight was shaved off of the car. And he shaved about 1,100 pounds out of this car. And I saw him take off, and it is 100% the truth. You start cutting weight out of a car, you know, you can do two things. You can add horsepower, which is really expensive, or you can cut weight. And Joe and I are on a budget, so he cut weight. Maybe a little more extreme than anything I've ever seen before, but the proof's in the pudding. The car is so much quicker now. Well, the car sits in a garage right now because the engine's pretty dogged out after 10 years of driving it, you know, driving it conservatively. And it's down on compression on the first cylinder. Well, luckily for Joe, he works at a manufacturing plant called Weiler's in Knoxville, Iowa. But 2 nights a week, he cuts wood for a guy that takes the wood down to the campgrounds for people to purchase. And this guy had a 2-door Honda Civic Coupe with a turbocharged D-Series motor in it. And he gave the car to Joe, just gave it to him. So we're gonna rebuild the turbocharged motor in that coupe, and we're gonna swap it out, and that'll be the next thing that happens to Betty. He's talking now about putting a roll cage in it. So in the end here, I think what I can tell you guys is, you can choose to do anything you want to your car. You know, I think that most people, when they get a car, they kind of have a vision for it right when they buy it. You know, whether or not that's what happens, and if you go a different way, that's okay. But he had a vision of what he wanted for this car, and it's exactly what he wanted. So maybe in the future I can give you an update after we get this motor built. Maybe we'll do a video of us building the motor and put in his car. But I have a feeling that no matter what car Joe buys, Black Betty will always be in the back of his garage. He'll always have this car. Everyone knows that I'm a pretty patriotic guy, and I'm really big into our servicemen and veterans. So at the end of this, I just want to say shout out to Joe Dothart. He managed to do 21 years in the military and retire, and he served a tour in Iraq. So you will see that if I'm talking about a veteran, I will give them a shout out at the end of the video, because that's what's most important to me. Well, I hope you guys tune in next time. Who knows what that build will be? Might be a little bit strange, but it won't be as wild as anything Joe's done, that's for sure. All right, guys, talk to you later.